Welcome to everybody. I've been working games for some time now, and I will introduce today to the world of mixed-signal low-power behavior with the latest generation of our simulator, meaning Excellium Parallel Logic Simulator. The objective of this seminar is to cover how you can actually realize the low-power simulation. And if you look at the slide on the topology on the right-hand side, you see a design with some blocks, with some CPU, with some cells, with some power domains, everything that your power management unit will add atop of your RTL. Usually, what you want to verify in low power simulation is power shutoff. That means it requires that at some point in time, you're going to shut off domains, and you expect a simulator to handle a corruption that you will get out at some point in time, and it will enable you to verify that your whole scheme is working perfectly, that you have isolated things correctly, or that your reset sequence is working. The question you may have is, how should I model? Is there anything I should take care during my design style to take care about low power simulation? I would say yes and no. Most of design components will be synthesizable, and they will rely on a single power and ground pair. That means, first, they do not require any specific modeling with regards to low power. They are actually just shut off. We will corrupt everything, and that's all. Their code, they are synthesizable blocks, so they are usually very low-level construct, and they can sustain a global engine corruption. However, for some specific blocks, often hard macro, you are relying on behavioral models that may or may not have specific requirements with regards to low power. If you take a memory, for example, you may have several power and ground pairs that you want to take into account. You may want to model the low power sequence and check for it. For example, that your backup power has been set up before the standard ones. And you may also carry out specific corruptions, meaning for the same example of a memory, you may want your memory control to be eventually corrupted or the memory array to be corrupted specifically. And you may have also some voltage-related down macros, like the LDO, that will generate internal power and ground pairs. The big question is how you can model and simulate them accurately. Modeling requires language support, and of course, depending on the world you are working in and the accuracy you want, it can either be in digital and or analog worlds. Digital will be using VHDL or System Verilog language. Analog worlds will be, for example, using System Verilog WREAL or PSPICE models. However, if you model for low power simulation, it will require an implicit conversion from the IEEE 1801 standard that you are going to use to model your power intent into these digital and analog worlds. Meaning that you will supply and you will describe your power intent, for example, here a VDD supply port and a VDD net, and at some point in time you need to do a conversion to the world of your design, meaning to the digital element of the analog piece. Question is how you can do that, and what is the support of the 1801 standard with the Cadence Excellium Parallel Logic Simulator. This is all what this webinar is about. That means that the agenda of the webinar is to remind you a little what is the introduction, remind you a bit about what is IEEE 1801 and what are the objectives of low power simulation. Then to think as a digital engineer how you will do that, meaning how you can model LDOs, how you can model memories, every ARM macros that you've got in your design. And then for some specific blocks like LDOs, like voltage generators, let's say, you may want to add atop of it a mixed signal simulation. So the real topic is how you can put layers. You've got a real simulation working in your world, then you have checked it functionally, you add the power intent and you check the low power, and now you add the mixing, you can even add mixed signal simulation, and from The engine standpoint, it won't change anything. From a debug standpoint, it won't change anything, except that you will see new pieces being brought up. After this long interruption, let's start. Let's start by reminding a little about what is a low-power simulation. The 1801 objective is really to define the power supply network for your design. Meaning that you had a design with a topology, with scopes, and so on and so forth, with ports, and you have verified it functionally. What the power intent will make is that it will add on top of it, like a mask if you prefer, a number of objects related to low power. Here you can see VDD1, these are supply ports, you can see red supply nets, you can see power switches, and so on and so forth. The idea is that the only constraint that you're going to require for low power simulation is, as usual in the daily life, before you take any electrical elements, you need to power it up. So in low power simulation, you will simply need to supply the primary supplies to kick your design off. If you don't do that, nothing will happen. After, you will be able to manage internally shut off domains and so on and so forth, but it will be the own simulation. And of course, we would love no change to your code to be ever required. It means we will not ask you to do any change to your design topology whatsoever. Just a quick reminder about what is 1801. It's just a way to describe and to infer at RTL, but also to get something the same cells instantiated during the implementation side, a number of low power objects. The objective is that this object will help you to save leakage and dynamic power. If I go quickly, that means you might define supply ports, which are the entry of your whole SOC or your whole IP. Then you might define supply nets to propagate the elements, and you will define supply set, meaning your group of power and nets and connections. At the end, you will define power domains, meaning you will enclose some logic blocks, hierarchical instances, leaf instances, and eventually pins into the same all together, and you will define that they are supplied by a main power supply and eventually related power one. That means that all these logic blocks can simultaneously switch on or off depending on the supplies you have. Of course, if you've got domain crossing elements, you may need to take care about isolation strategy. The isolation cells that you're going to infer at the end of the story will prevent unknown values to propagate from domains that are powered down to domains that are powered up. You may also take care about state retention strategy. The idea is that each time you've got a power down elements, you want to resume normal activities. You may end up with standard reset and start from scratch, but for some specific elements, which is for you to figure out, you may need a better way to do that and a faster way, which is to use specific cells that have dual rail elements and that enable you to save part of the A value. Of course, this is not something we really take care in simulation. If you've got domain crossing, this domain can operate on different voltage. You may have, from an implementation standpoint, the requirement for level shifters. This is not something, for example, that a simulation will take care. Last but not least, you may have power switch logic, meaning that, as you can see, you've got an object in between that you will infer that a specific hardware control will enable the power switch to be available or to be on or off. Now, the whole purpose of that as a verification guide is to understand that you've got power state, that you have simulated all of that, meaning that you have simulated that PD1 was off, what PD1 was on, and so on and so forth. And of course, that you have not simulated illegal ones, because illegal ones mean that your power intent is basically wrong. Having said that, the whole purpose of the seminar is to remind you what can you do regarding models. And I would say not really standard blocks, standard elements of your topology, but more or less LDOs, things on which have a play with power, meaning blocks that require a specific understanding of their supplies to do whatever you want, and maybe blocks that will generate supplies out of it. The question is how you model them. The objective of the simulation is, of course, to verify the power intent at different stages of the flow. Meaning that you will apply this power intent at RTL, and you will start with whatever you have described so far. You will provide a complex environment using the 1801 file, And you may add also liability models to play with. You will later go through the implementation side and output a netlist. This netlist, you may also reuse part of the entire 1801 file in order to check that you are still going the same. Meaning that your netlist may or may, at this stage, may not have the routing. So you may use the 1801 file output from the synthesis to provide the electrical supplies to these cells. But it's also a way to use an hybrid mode, meaning that we're going to check on the fly that what you've got in the netlist is fitting with what we were expecting. Let's say, for example, you've got an isolation strategy that you expect a specific isolation cells to be put on this net. We will look at the net inside the gate level netlist, and we'll figure out whether this cell is instantiated correctly or not. And we will tell you maybe that this cell does not exist. And in this case, we will rely on the isolation strategies. The idea of that is to provide a flexibility. Like 20 years ago, when we moved from schematic-based to RTL, the idea in using a power intent as a high-level description language, I would say, instead of instantiating manually in your RTL all the isolations through all the low power structure, is a way to get flexibility and to run what-if analysis. What-if analysis will later enable you to do some power consumption analysis in some tools. That will enable you to guarantee that you're going to meet your objective in terms of power consumption. Now, 1801 is a standard. It has evolved since the beginning, since its first contribution to Axelera with the UPF 1.0, and you've seen UPF 2.0, 1801 to 2009, and then 13, 15, and so on. And you have another element, which is a big contributor, which is the liability model. So the big question you may ask is, okay, what is the level of support from the Cadence simulator? This Cadence simulator, first, will ignore all the 1801 commands that are not relevant for the simulation. It will silently ignore them. Second, of course, this 1801 standard is a big bucket of a number of commands. You may have options from time to time that are not supported and on which you provide a guideline. The first thing is that Cadence is not only delivering a simulator, it's also delivering implementation tools and other elements. That's why what we have added to guarantee an interoperability between tools is that we have now a team in charge of a common UPF linter that all the tools will use. This will guarantee that the same subset of the standard is supported by all the tools the same way. Now back to the simulator. The simulator will support the 1801-2009 by default, or it will follow the UPF version that you've put at the ahead in your specification. Now, there is a way to mix and match different standards, almost for some elements, like if you've got still a UPF 1.0 scheme for the isolation, or if you want to relax and get access to some latest feature of 1801 features with the LPS Relax 1801. Now, in the 1801, there is not only a standard. There is also a UPF package, which is written in System Verilog and VHDL that we are keen to implement. This UPF package provides two things. Data types to design power management. As you can see, you've got now a new type, which is supply net types. That provides you an enumerated type, which is state, that tells you whether the state is undetermined, off, or full on. And there is a voltage in microvolt. But it will also give you functions to drive and query information on power supplies, meaning that you will have a way to, like here, to supply your own, here a supply port, which is PV_VDD in some specific hierarchy with 1.0 volt. On top of that, we are also committed to extend the 1801, and we have provided actually a couple of extensions to the standard. For example, we give you new commands specifically for simulation that helps you to understand and select and disable corruptions when some power is switched off in order to handle maybe some cases where your code is not well fitted for what we want to do. Or think about, for example, a ROM on which during the initial portion you are using a $image to read a memory file out, an external memory file. Maybe if you happen to shut off the domain, you may want the value to be restored. Semantically speaking, we are not supposed to replace the initial blocks, but there we have a function to power up replay, meaning to replace initial blocks when the power domain is back up. Last but not least, we have also ways to consider user-defined assertions. For example, imagine, and it's a basic example, that you've got a request, that your assertion is taking, if I've got a request, I've got a grant, but imagine that the grant is in a power domain that you're switching off. What do you expect? Because your grant will be corrupted, that means the assertion will trigger. The question is, what do you want to do? Do you want to disable the corruption, disable the assertion for any time, or do you want to suspend? Meaning, from your design standpoint, do you expect that when the power domain will be back up, your assertion will be, and your grant will still be given or not, be fulfilled or not? That's a big question. And it's up to you to decide on specific assertions per assertion, how do you want us to handle that? Having said that, let's move to the second part, meaning to enter the world of digital simulation. Let's assume you've got a design, nice ones. You put a test bench on top of it, and you want to simulate with your power runtime. Assume there is no power in a power domain on which you've got some behavioral or RTL code or gate level. What do you expect us to do with regards to the behavior of the model? Well, imagine your space, your nice register, your nice memory. What do you expect us to do? I would say that there are three cases. By default, your description, we can assume your description is not at all fitted for low power simulation. So what we will do by default is that whenever the power domain in which your block is located, we will corrupt the wall contents to X. That means, you see, my white box was transformed in red, meaning that everything is corrupted to a specific value. The second way is to say, okay, this is a ARM macro for which I have also Liberty model. The Liberty model can be seen as a low power view of the description that will be put atop of the model that you have. That means that we will not corrupt the entire design, the entire blocks. We will corrupt only the fan-in-out code of the ports upon specific conditions. In the Liberty model, there are attributes such as related power pin, related ground pin that links the supply net to the port, to the pin of the model. Each time the supply net will go out, will go off, then we will take over and corrupt the fan-out code of the pin. Same thing for the output, but you have also another way, which is a power down function. The power down function can be as easy as simply bank VDD or VSS, meaning that if the VDD is 0 and the VSS is 1, then do corrupt my fan-out. But it could also use standard hardware objects in order to restrict the corruption to specific cases. Now, finally, your description could be fitted for low power. For example, think about a memory. You may want to control exactly what kind of corruption you want to handle. That means you expect your models to contain also PGPIN. You have VDD, you have GND. We will simply make sure that the supply net connected to it will provide the good value, and then it's up to you to model it correctly. And for example, say, if my VDD is different than 1, then I will do something. I will trigger an assertion. I will corrupt the memory array. That's up to you. This is your responsibility. Our responsibility as a tools provider is simply to make sure that the supply net you have connected your pin to is provided the correct value upon expectation. So let's go further into detail. Default PSO behavior. Imagine you've got a nice AND gate somewhere in your topology. At a point in time, you will have a power intent, and this instance will be now enclosed not from a RTL description, but from a low power description inside the power domain. This power domain will have power and ground pairs. Like here, it's a PDSW. You have VDD, you have VSS. It's working fine as soon as VDD and VSS are full on. Your description, in my case, is very simple. It's just a round, but you can think about anything. There is no Liberty model. It's just a standard behavioral code, maybe. There is no power and ground pins, as you can see, only the input and outputs, and maybe a lot of things. And the big question will be, as soon as you shut off the domain, what is supposed to happen? Basically, all the content of the model will be corrupted. Not only the ports, but everything inside. And then, at a point in time, you are supposed to resume your activity, meaning that VDD will be back full on, your domain will be alive again, and then we will no longer force the corruption, meaning that the corruption will be released. But the corruption will still be there until you decide, until you apply a reset scheme, until you apply an isolation, until a number of things. So that's why you will go a little further, and it will be up to you to figure out whether you did it right, meaning that you have been able to resume all correct value on all your objects or not. And this is what the power shutoff is all about, ensuring that you are able to resume any activity after a specific domain has been switched off. Now, if you've got a Verilog 4 state, like a register based on 0x1z, it's easy. We are going to corrupt it to x. If you got a VHDL 9 state object, like STD logic, we are going to corrupt it to x fairly easy. There are a couple of outstanding points on which we will not apply, like a delay value, like a loop variables. But then I just wanted to raise two specific outstanding exceptions. One is enumerated VHDL type, and the other one is integer. Think about an enumerated types. Think about your preferred final state machine. Idle, state 0, state 1. You have no way, you have only 3 ways, and the encoding is of course done at implementation level. Now, when we do corrupt, which value do you expect us to do? We could pick the got left, we could pick the got right, we could pick a random value. But imagine we pick a got left. Your design will be, your enumerated state will be back to the first value, which is often the one which is at reset, and your power state machine could start again. Fine. So what we decided is that under the hood, we will add a new X value to make sure that you have to do something in order to really resume your activity. For integers, the problem is a bit different. Imagine you've got an integer, you may have a sub-integer ranging from 0 to 7, for example. That means that only these 8 values are supported. If we corrupt this integer, which value do you expect to put? Maybe the code left, maybe a random value, maybe the code right. A number of possibilities are offered. Now, the big problem is that if you've got an integer used as indices, there may be a problem. For example, if you say integer, and instead of 0 to 8 to 7 because you had only 8 elements, you may say integer with no subtype. Then we may apply for a random value and we may figure to be out of range. So you may fix it, you may figure it out, but the idea, the whole idea, at least to start with, is to start with no integer corruption, and then we expect that at a point in time you will move your integer into hardware object, transforming into hardware object on which there will be a corruption. Then, if it's really applicable, you can move to a specific integer corruption. Having said that, you have always a way to avoid the corruption. UPF always on statement, pragma, can be put in your code to say, I don't want you to handle this code differently, meaning that I want you to always on not to do any corruption in this block. Or you can have a setting control, meaning your UPF in the 1801 file, you can do the same. Again, you can also, if you've got some initial blocks, replace the value and therefore avoid some elements initialized in an initial statement to keep being corrupted. Last but not least, you may use some options to replay forces. This point is important because if, for example, you are used to force some internal elements, you may say that when you have done a corruption, you may want the same force to appear again. So that's why we are going to analyze what kind of forces you have done, and you are going to replay it at power up. Now think about a non-power aware model. Things are a little different because you've got now, and it's what appears on the left side, you've got now a libAT model which describes, of course, a number of things, but I simply put an extract only related only the pins and PG pins. If you look at it, you've got your A, B, Y pin, and you've got an attribute stating the related power pin or power down function. That means that when you will connect through the UPF snippet that you see on the bottom of the slide connect SupplyNet VDD to the VDD port of your instance, the tool will figure out that as soon as VDD is full on, the related power pin is on, your pin is alive. As soon as VDD is off, your related power pin is off. That means that the fan-out cone of pin A should be corrupted. In other words, when you will switch off VDD, we will corrupt the fan-out port of A and B, and we will also look at the power down function. VDD being 0, the power down function will be 1. We will corrupt the fan-out port of Y. Just that. Of course, if it was a more complex model, only the same scheme will apply. We will only corrupt the inputs and the outputs. We will not do anything on the internal elements of the model. It's just high-level corruptions because we assume that you want to handle this as a macro, not to have the full details in time. In summary, a non-power-aware model performs the corruption of an outcome of the port using the value of liberty attributes. The power model is a bit different because here you've got PG types, is the primary models, but you can see them also in your ports of the description. So in this case, we simply rely on the models to use VDD set to 0, and we will use for that a specific value change table, meaning a VCT, telling that you will move from UPF to SD logic or UPF to underscore ground 0 to SD logic, meaning that the full on will be translated to S0 for the ground to work correctly. And that's all we're going to do. This VCT will be extracted automatically from JPSG type, but you can, of course, put it explicitly. Means that automatically from primary ground, we will figure out which VCT to use. In other words, the power model manages the corruption inside the model that the simulator does not perform input or output corruption. It's just for you to figure out. The voltage-aware model is a bit different. You're going to do the same, but in fact, instead of having a reg, you're going to rely on a SupplyNet type. Remember, UPF package provides this. That means you will have access not only to the state of the object, but to the value. And you play with the dot voltage. That means that inside your descriptions, VDD, the SupplyNet VDD will have the type of full on, off, but also a value that you can play with. You can also use some UPF, some liberty constructions, such as the switch cell type, to describe a switch directly. That means in my case, I don't have really to model a UPF model a -del description, because from the liberty, the tool will figure out how to do that. It will figure out that PGUN is my entry point. Now, think about it. If you have simply, you are passive, you are receiving supplies, you may end up with what I said. Now, if your block was supposed to generate a power, like for example a switch, and I want to generate VDDSW, the question is how I can generate it. Here, for example, in the liberty model, you see internal power. That means that the tool will figure out that VDDSW is not in UPF to SD logic sense, is in the other sense, SV underscore logic to UPF. That means that you will convert the 0 into off, the 1 into full on. However, the problem is that with one register, you can handle the state, full on, off, but you cannot handle the voltage. That's why we will put -001 to give you the idea. In other words, power-aware model can generate internal supply power very well, but they will not hold state voltage. So they only handle state accordingly. That's why you may also use, and it will be back to my point, you can also use voltage-aware model, meaning that this time you've got the SupplyNet type VDDSW, you can connect. That means that as you can see, VDDSW this time it has a voltage 5.0 or 0 and a state which is full on or off. That means that during the connection to the 1801 world, you will have the voltage and the state. This will be a nicer way to play with that. And in other words, UPF package structure enables you to accurately model your state and voltage. The big question for that is that we're still in digital worlds. That means that we have really frank connections. You switch off, you've got a zero delay connection. Maybe it's not enough for your element. Maybe you will tell me, yes, I would like a slope to be described, I would like some elements to be described, so maybe I would like an analog model to enter. And it's where we're reading with the low powers. So the big question is, now, instead of having a full digital view, I want to have red boxes, meaning I want to have analog models. And this is where mixed signals can be in place. That means you will have to handle two things. You will have to understand how we handle the signal path, meaning how can we translate the data moving from digital to analog world and vice versa, but also the supply path, meaning how we establish the connection between 1801 world to the analog world and vice versa. First, let's have a look to the signal path. Imagine you've got a digital box connected to the analog view. We will automatically identify the power domain state in which digital A is, so we will know the voltage. We will use the voltage because we know the supply state associated to the domain, and we will therefore put a power smart connection in between this one and the analog world. If somehow you had an isolation rule, we will also identify it and we will create a specific ISO elements to do that. If it was the opposite, meaning you had moving from analog to digital, we will do the same. We will propagate, we will make sure that we'll propagate the analog value to the digital worlds correctly. So now let's talk about the UPF world. How do you connect UPF power supplies to WREOL or electrical supply? For example, imagine you've got these elements, the orange part being the UPF element, so you're going to dollar supply on a number of elements. You're going to connect them to the analog. How do you do that? How do you transform your supply net, your 1801 supply net, into your WREOL or electrical world? In fact, it goes through a VCT table again. If you take it in one direction, the UPF supply net, it can be connected to anything. This is a unidirectional connection. You simply will use the connect supply net command in 1801 that we have enhanced to support the connection to mixed signal network. In other words, we will make sure that the voltage information of the UPF supply net will propagate to the voltage value of your WREOL or electrical world, and we will simply ignore the power state info of the supply net because we don't care about it in your electrical world. To do that, we will use the 1801 command, which is create underscore UPF to HDL underscore VCT. How do you do that? Let's have an example. We will simply say dash HDL type system verilog CDS underscore real number modeling, and we will give a table of WREOL Z state and so on and so forth. And we will use this VCT when you will connect your ports, the ports of your analog model, to the supply net. Same thing for the ground, except that full on, of course, will be mapped to 0. Now, since we wanted to model a switch, let's think about the other element. We want to do the opposite, meaning that we want to connect, we want the analog block to output of voltage. For example, here my box, my red box power supply must be the generator for VDD2. There, it's a bidirectional connection, meaning that this time the UPF still need a require state and a voltage. WREOL and electric ports still provide a state but no voltage. The question is, how can you handle the connection from the analog world, this time, to the 1801 world? Same thing through a VCT. And this time, in fact, what will happen is that we know the voltage. We will carry it out from the analog world to the 1801 world, but we're missing the state. How to do that? We will simply create a sample of the different voltage value and say, for example, that is the voltage. If my objective is 5 volts, I would say that if I get more than 4.8, I'm in full on. If I'm less than 4.5, I'm in off. Using this conversion function, I'll be able to model that each time my ramp or whatever will go in my analog block, I will get my VDD2 being moved partially from off to partial on to full on with a different voltage each time. At the end of the story, I'll be able to just add a little AMSD description to say that my supply is equal to real number. So I will just add a couple of, will just handle the impedance, which is critical for my analog block simulation, and say that, for example, the routing is perfect on my two supplies. Same thing for the elements. So if I come back to my example, I still want to apply for my switch in real number modeling. So here, this is a really a basic example where I've just modeled a slope in both directions. I will create the couple of VCT tables, as you can see. I've got my power to map from a VDD to the VDD analog block. I've got the supply to move, the VCT to move from my ground to the ground pin of my analog block. And same thing for the VDD in the other sense, to map for the VDD underscore SW. And what you will see compared to what happened in my digital world is that VDD SW in my, with my analog model is now a ramp. It's not longer an ideal transition. You can model a full ramp and assume that you have an inertia on your power switch, that until you reach a specific voltage, it will take time, and you don't want the digital guide to do something while it's not fully powered up. If, for example, you do, and for example, if you look to the small scheme, you've got now a ramp that will appear in the waveform, simply because you say that you had a W real element, VDD-SW, that you created a table for it to map it to the supply net, and that you used in the connect supply net. So in your waveform, you will clearly see a slope. Same thing for a SPICE model. Imagine you've got a small SPICE model for that. You created the MSD elements and where you describe all the VSUP and so on and so forth, and you say that your cell was a SPICE model. Then you create the same UPF code because you had added some elements, some VCT table, just the same. What will happen is that your model will use a SPICE description. Your VCT table will ensure that your VDD underscore SW supply net will have the correct value. And at the end, you will not have an ideal transition. You will not have a slope. You will see an oscillation until your elements reach the correct value. And this is what we are aiming to. So the goal of the presentation, as a summary, was to show you that from a standard topology that you have used in using the Excellium platform, you can use the top of that low power format. This presentation was in 1801, but you could also use CPF, just because it's the another supported format. And you can enter first, you can leverage the platform to model to have a better modeling of some digital blocks using some specific constructs, taking the supplies into account more than just shutting everything off. And then you can also, with a couple of options and a couple of descriptions, use the SVRMM description or use a SPICE description. Last but not least, you will have some debugging capabilities, meaning that the same vision debug tools or the same elements or the same tools that you've been using for functional verification, you'll use them for low power, and you will use them for mixing all low power. At the end, the idea was really to show you that moving one step at a time, you end up with a platform able to support everything from purely digital to mix purely digital with low power, and of course, digital with low power and mixed signals modeling. And that means we are able to extend everything in both directions. Just wanted to show you something. So for example, each time you end up in your power supply networks, this is what you will see. You will see a supplied network topology. You will look at your supply port, which are there. You will see your supply net. You will see your supply set. You will see the connection to your domain. If you've got a power switch in your UPF, you'll be able to see your connection, meaning the in port, the out port, and the HDL control. And of course, the elements could be entered again in a supply port and so on and so forth. So the first tool that you'll be able to use is the power supply network, because it will give you the ability to understand how well is your topology, where are your macro. For example, there is one there that is my switch that I have described. So I understand that I've got my switch that is delivering VDD and VSS and delivering VDD-SW that is going into my supply set, that is going into my domain, so I can better understand what is happening. Of course, we will also give you some waveform, meaning that you can access to the power domain information. When the bulb, you can understand that when the bulb is light on, it means your domain in which you are plugging in is alive, on that. And you can run the simulation. Actually, when you run the simulation, you can see you've got some domains being switched off. You see my bulb is on. My bulb now of counter is off, and I get the value. You may say, yes, but I want to understand what is the value. And I'm in mixed signal world. That means that somehow you see that the transition is not really an ideal word. I really move to it. And you can see that you've got, I was transitioning from full on 5 volt to 0 volt. At the end of the story, I get my 0 volt, but in reality, I've got to the element. And this is really to show you that I could have the demo, the same thing for RTL. You will have seen a nice ideal transition. Moving to a voltage, you would have seen another better element. In SW real, you would have seen a slope, maybe. And with SPICE model, because indeed my switch is a SPICE model, you see now a representation of better oscillations leading to the taking capacitors and resistors into account and leading to the voltage. So this is where I wanted to end. And I'm almost in time, so now it's open for questions about methodology to deployments. So I'm sorry if I was a bit fast. Maybe it will lead up to some questions that I will now answer. And of course, if you've got questions, no problem.